great mountains are infested with orcs, and the dwarves basically do what they always do. They shut themselves in their mansions, and they just, they're like ostriches putting their heads in the sand for the most part.
Honestly, it just kind of makes me feel sad because you see in the Hobbit trilogy when the dwarves of the Iron Mountain come and you're like, oh
Yeah.
man, these guys are pretty badass.
No, well, when the dwarves do want to fight, they are badass. I mean, we won't talk about this episode, but in the Third Age, there's a war called the War of the Dwarves and the Orcs, and all of the houses of the dwarves get involved, and
Is
it's
it the
brutal.
one that's alluded to in The Hobbit? Like where
Yes.
Thorin was trying to take back his throne.
Yeah, it's a very long war, and it's very bloody. And actually, the what we call the Misty Mountain Orcs, or the Northern Orcs, I'll keep calling them, they don't come back. Like, their population is just destroyed for the rest of the Third Age because of that war. Yeah. Sauron has other motivations, though, other than just invasion. He wants to get all the rings of power. He gets most of them, but he doesn't have the 3 elven rings, which what he really wants. So Sauron is now turning towards Lindon. I'll bring up the map. This would be like...
And those rings were hidden, right? Because the moment they wore it, and Sauron had created the One Ring, it was like on that contact, the elven rulers who wore them realized what was happening, and they quickly removed it before he could get a grasp over them.
Now, Sauron is pushing Gil-galad's army to the River Lun and Mithlon, so he's winning grounds. This is about 1700 SA. But then, at the last moment, the Númenóreans start landing. And they're landing, in places around Lindon, where they form basically 2 different armies. One's further south, near Longdeer, one's near Lindon, and they start pincer attacking Sauron. Sauron then starts to lose a series of battles. He tries to get reinforcements at a place called Tharbad. I don't know if the map even has that location, but for those who know. And he's amphibiously assaulted because the Númenóreans are like infantry marine types. Sauron has nothing to do against them. Like, it's like Mike Tyson fighting an infant, And his army gets routed.
That's fucking...
Basically. And so he gets beaten in, I think, 3 or 4 different battles, all the way to Dagorlad. This is kind of just on the ways right into Mordor. And at the same time, Gil-galad rushes over to Imladris, and he relieves Elrond in his siege. So basically, Sauron's entire little war backfired massively on him.
Yeah, it said like his entire army's killed.
Yeah. Now, Sauron looks at this, and he's back in Mordor. He's trying to cultivate more of the Easterlings and the Southrons, and he says to himself, I can't win this militarily. I have to form a new strategy. His enemy, of course, is not going to let up, because Ar-Pharazôn is landing now at Umbar and is marching on Mordor. And to this, Sauron just comes over and gives himself up as a hostage, surprisingly. And here we have...
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that happened a few hundred years later.
Yes.
Sauron... So, because right now Sauron is just defeated. The elves take back their lands in whatever numbers they can, and because this is like around 1700 in the Second Age, year 1700.
Oh, it's thousands. It's like 3,200 something when Ar-Pharazôn lands and attacks them. It's been a long millennia almost, yeah. But time, when you're reading this, it's like thousands of years. But yeah, so Sauron... Yeah.
No, I think this was the War of the Elves and Sauron, right? And just after he... So yeah, because I think, if I remember the timeline, this is just when Númenor starts to really expand its presence on Middle-earth.
Yes.
Otherwise, they just had like a few settlements and trading relations, but they did not really have much of a presence. And this is where we see the true foundations for the kingdoms of the Númenóreans being founded here.
Yeah, so I don't know, it can't be really seen so well on the map, but
that Southlands would be Gondor.
Yeah. So Umbar would be a major coastal city that was formed by the Kingsmen. So everything that's in the south is more Kingsmen. Things in the north is more faithful as far as who's colonizing what. Peligir, which is a part, it's a coastal port city for Gondor, is established. It's a refuge for men and elves and such. There's all sorts. There's Longdeer, there's Tharbad, there's all these outposts. And for a long time in the history, while the faithful were in charge, they came to Middle Earth and they played nice with the middlemen and they taught them things, like how to do agriculture, all this and that. But as the king's men take over, they start to straight up enslave them. And they abuse them, they use them for slave labor. And I won't talk about it. It'll be when Sauron gets involved, it gets even worse. But basically, they're abusing the middlemen now, and they're becoming more evil. They're becoming colonizers and such. And then they go to war with Sauron, and before they know it, Sauron just gives himself up willingly. And then you have this long period of history where Sauron starts off as a prisoner, and then he becomes an advisor directly to King Pharazôn, Ar-Pharazôn. And the king more and more listens to Sauron as he tells him things like, you know what, you've been screwed over by the Valar. Actually, why can't you go to the Undying Lands? You should do things like worship Melkor, because he was the true ruler of Arda. And to worship Melkor, you should do human sacrifice. And I actually have one piece of art, I think, someone drew. Where is it? It's yeah. So this is like what it would look like on Númenór. So it's horrifying. So they start taking middlemen or the faithful, and they start sacrificing them, and this causes more and more of the faithful to depart Númenór to the colonies because they're being persecuted. Sauron is basically trying to edge them on to invade the Undying Lands, to go against the Valar.
And honestly, he doesn't just give a shit about like controlling the Númenóreans. He knows he really cannot.
Yeah.
He just wants to get rid of them.
But he's presented as kind of this great wizard advisor figure. They look up to him. And Sauron, he's kind of showing himself a little bit in the end. But anyways,
I think
they
he's
spin.
working on the seeds of doubts that had been planted centuries ago before he was here, right? When the Númenóreans start to question the Valar.
And he gets them finally to agree. The king says, yeah, we're going to invade Valar because we'll just go to those Undying Lands and then we will gain immortality. So they spend a long time building this massive armada to invade.
I think I'll just add one thing. Just before this, the fact that, in the couple of centuries before this invasion, they even banned anyone from contacting the elves or speaking the elvish languages. It's literally
it's a long history I just can't get into. But yeah, they do all sorts of horrible things. They attack elves that come to Númenor, then they don't allow them to come because the elves would periodically bring gifts of flowers and stuff to them. They're enslaving all the men of Middle Earth, using them as human sacrifices. They're doing other grotesque things. They burn the sacred tree, everything. And then they invade the Undying Lands. They actually do invade and take over a very small town, by the way. Insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
But they did take a lot of time to build up. It wasn't like a rushed invasion because the Great Armament period was literally almost a decade.
Yeah. And the Valar do get involved. They literally just drown Númenor. They destroy all of the invaders, all of their ships, and they change the world again. It's actually for the last time, destroying Númenor. And now the only survivors of the Númenóreans are those kingsmen that are in the south, that are in places like Umbar, for example, and the faithful, who are in the northern reaches, into places that will eventually become the kingdoms of Arnor and Gondor. And Sauron was killed for the first time. Yes, it would be the first time he drowns with the rest of them, cackling like a madman, because he was actually in the religious temple on Númenor laughing when he got them to do this. It's never explained how his one ring gets back to him. That is always confused me. But anyways, his spirit leaves after he is drowned, and it goes back to Mordor, where he slowly has to rebuild his body.